If you can hear this, you are in the right place at the right time, blasting out of the tangled industrial desert of the Underhive and slamming through the Vox waves like a nanoparticle of Fulbright. We are 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio, contaminating your ear holes with the truth while giving the middle finger all the way up to the upper hive.
Interesting intro there, Gobbo. Razor Eyes Blizzards, on the other hand, are once again shredding the outer hive walls, leading to uncomfortably humid conditions here in the hive. They say it sounds like rattling bones if you get close enough to the hive walls, though.
I don't know anything about that, but I do know that we are working a production detail here at the Carastus Weapon Manufactorum on Sublevel 8, a job the Exilia gave us. I'm not really sure why they trust us, but you know what? The Vox waves are thick, so I'm in sound wave heaven.
You know, I hear Kev has a couple of lasting love persons in the Auxilia. Might have something to do with that, giving us this shit detail.
Who knows?
In Hive news, Melters Guild storehouses on Sublevel 1 were hit overnight, reporting losses of over 200 tons of trithium salt. The guild has accused the Nutty Jays of production of hive spice, probably laced with some crust.
You don't say.
I do.
I wonder where all that water went.
I am your host on this meandering path through the unreality of time and space, Goblin King, and guiding us is our map expert, Marky.
Where are we?
Our heavy weapons support, because I'm not paying attention to the protection detail we're on, is Beast.
Hello, everyone.
And I'm pretty sure he got us this job. Kev, tell us exactly how did you get this contact to hire us?
You know, sometimes they just need somebody to do it for the bottom dollar.
I'm telling you, Kev's
Fair
got some
enough.
old flames in there, and they don't appreciate him anymore. So they're like, you know what, he can have this job.
I think Kevin's really emphasizing the keyword there of bottom.
So this is.
I was like, one of you guys is gonna make the joke. I'm just waiting for it. I'm like, I can put the ball on the tee and I can mow the grass.
you gotta be
but
quicker
one of
than
you's
that.
gotta hit it.
You gotta be quicker than that.
Sometimes,
dollar.
sometimes you're a power bottom. I get you. I get you.
No. I fuck up.
That's the only
So
thing I do.
So this is part 2 of our exploration of action movies and the Guard. And as we went over last time, this is a really good foundation. It's a really good starting place. And we've, if you listen to our last episode, or if you've listened to our last episode, and you should go listen to it if you haven't, Kev and Marky went over a couple of action films from the 80s and 90s, not the 70s and 80s, from the 80s and 90s that they enjoyed, and linked them to different parts of the Imperial Guard, and also talked a little bit about how to build their own regiments using those. And now Beast and I get our chance to do the same thing. As we did last time, we wanted to bring up a couple of honorable mentions, films that fit the theme, the je ne sais quoi, if you will, of the Imperial Guard, but didn't necessarily make our list, or something that talks to the heroes of the Imperial Guard. A lot of times movies only focus on one character, so sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to pick out something. I'm going to go a little bit outside of our time range, but I think that it fits, and I'm pretty sure we can do it back in time too. But I'm going to say The Expendables. The Expendables are movies that exemplify parts of the Imperial Guard really well.
God, I fucking love those movies.
Yeah.
Maybe Primaris Scions, actually, I would say. Or not Primaris Scions.
The
Tempestus sound.
Tempestus, thank you.
The Expendables as a film, when it first came out, the first one, was the moment
Delicious.
in my life that I never thought would happen.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
I mean, every single one of those characters,
So-
are actors.
So think about Avengers Endgame, but over like the course of 30, 40 years.
oh my
right?
God, yeah, you're
Right?
You're
That's
yeah.
true.
Yeah.
And the reason that I feel that we can pull the Expendables into this is because what the Expendables is doing is the Expendables is specifically playing with that concept of the 80s and 90s action hero. They're just making a
100%.
giant.
Oh yeah.
They're like 80s and 90s action heroes. You can have all of them.
Right, but
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. The
exactly,
accumulation
exactly.
of
Yeah.
all of the...
I mean, fucking Dolph Lundgren.
So
Like,
Yeah, right.
like I'm gonna bring up one.
If
movie.
he dies, he dies.
I'm gonna bring up a movie that I don't think any of us have actually really thought about.
Universal Soldier.
Fuck you. Yeah.
The Last
I know
Starfighter.
exactly.
The Last Starfighter. Yep, that's a good one. But yeah,
That's another good
Universal
one, yeah.
Soldier with Dolph Lundgren and fucking
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Jean-Claude Van Damme, man, like one of the best fucking
Yeah.
movies that came. Like,
I'm right there with you.
yeah, dude, fucking 13th Warrior. We talked about it on the last
Mhm.
podcast.
Yeah.
13th Warrior is by far one of my all-time favorite movies. I still watch it to this day.
So link Universal Soldier to a hero of the Imperial Guard or to a regiment.
Well, actually, so this one may not actually click to you, but it does to me.
Yeah. That's why I'm
fucking-
asking.
It's not Imperial Guard.
Uh-oh.
I'm thinking,
Farsight.
Going off script.
Farsight and Shadow
okay,
Sun.
I can see.
Mm.
Okay.
Farsight and Shadow Sun.
keeping them alive, keeping
Yep.
them on ice.
They freeze them.
Yeah.
They freeze them and
Mm.
bring them when they need them. That's
Yeah.
that is exactly what Tau do with their heroes.
because of their short lifespan,
Yeah,
right?
they
Mhm.
freeze them. Yeah, and that's exactly what the thing about Universal Soldier was, is that they were meant to be kept on ice.
right.
Yeah.
That was their whole thing. These guys were Vietnam vets that they then brought out after the Gulf War.
Mhm.
So that was that. I know that's not Imperial Guard, but that was
No,
that
it's still a
was-
pretty
Well,
good connection.
And it
That's
it
really
can
diverse, I
almost
like it.
be because they do
arc.
similar things. Imperial heroes are rejuved and rebuilt.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, we
Yeah, they
we
get the
touched on it. It's
rejuve
more like
methods.
RoboCop and $1 Million Man than it is like
Mhm,
freezing.
mhm.
But I almost guarantee you that like Yarick is put in stasis between
Oh, yeah.
deployments.
Yeah.
Like there's,
Well, I mean,
I almost
I-
guarantee it because the dude's like 500
Yeah.
years old. There's no way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like Eisenhorn is a couple hundred years old by the second
Right.
book. Like rejuve treatments and augmetics are a thing that are very standard, especially in the upper crust of
Right.
Imperial heroes or Imperial citizenry. To riff off of that, though, I'm gonna bring up Demolition Man,
Oh,
another
yeah.
film
Yeah.
where people
good,
are frizz.
Good call. Good call.
And I'm actually gonna go out on a limb and say that they were both Imperial Guard heroes. And I'm gonna say that Wesley Snipes was a Catachan Imperial Guard hero that went a little off the rails, and now they're sending a Cadian hero after him. I like that.
No,
I think
no,
that's the way it
the,
bounces.
The police guys. What did you call them? The
Arbites.
The Mordians.
Arbites. Oh, it's an Arbites.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
No, it's
No, Mordian.
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 Oh, Mordian.
Yeah,
Oh,
Sylvester
yeah,
Stallone.
Sly is
Sylvester
a Mordian.
Stallone is a
Okay.
Mordian. Yep.
Dude, even
Totally
the
a Mordian.
uniform, even the police uniforms in
Yup.
now that you mention it in Demolition Man are super Mordian. I like
Yup.
okay, way
Yup.
better.
Yeah.
I still like Wesley Snipes being an off the rails.
Oh no,
Catachan,
that
though.
one, that one, dope. Like totally, yeah, that makes sense.
And then you run into the tunnel
They have-
rats when you
have,
run into
yeah,
Dennis Leary's
yeah.
underground gang.
They have
Best rap burger I've ever had.
They had the diagrams
Right.
on how to use the 3 seashells.
Oh, really? He doesn't know how to use the
He
seashells.
doesn't know how to
doesn't
use
know
the
how to
3
use the
seashells.
seashells.
Another one with fucking. Why is Rob Schneider in so many of these?
Right.
Movies? I was just thinking, I'm like fucking Rob Schneider.
He is. This is another movie he's in.
Another fucking movie.
Dude, the
he's
fucking
in.
sex scene in that, I was like, oh my god. This is
When he takes off the, why can't we do it the old-fashioned way?
what was her name? She was
Sandra
man,
Bullock.
Sandra
How did-
Bullock?
How did you forget Sandra Bullock, brother?
Oh, dude,
Whew.
yeah. Yeah. I'm not good with names.
Sandra.
It's
I'm not
fine.
good with a lot of
I'm
things.
just giving you shit. I'm just giving you shit. Any other 80s, 90s films that we haven't brought up yet? I know it would be a stretch, but I have one more that I want to bring up.
I mean, we could go back a little. It might be going back a little further because I honestly don't remember when the movies were made.
war film. Yeah.
And I know that Tom likes this regiment, but like the Boer War movies,
Zulu War.
Zulu
movies.
War. I mean, they've got a bunch of different ones for that time period, but they're all essentially the same
It-
thing.
yeah, they're all
Would be
kind of 60s, 70s.
Praetorians. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
whole point is that Praetorians are that movie turned into an Imperial Guard regiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roke's Drift.
And also on a different branch, same tree, we've got Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Another
see, I
great
was
movie.
going to talk about that, but it wasn't in the time frame. But yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Like, yeah,
And that
Lawrence
is
of Arabia.
Lawrence of Arabia. For those that don't know the historical context, aka this guy,
Mhm.
Lawrence of Arabia was supposed to basically train the indigenous populations to fight against the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
During World War One.
But
And
in
as
turn,
a-
they basically taught him
and-
how to fight.
And then instead of him teaching the indigenous people how to fight like first world countries, they were like, no, this is the desert. You fight like the desert.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
basically he got Fremen.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need
That was the idea. The whole concept of the Fremen and that was basically also borrowed from that same kind of storyline. Like we said in the last episode, what was it? You don't reinvent the wheel, you just change the tire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or something like that.
What's the saying that they have? What's the saying that the Afghans have?
Why buy the milk when you can?
No,
Fuck the cow for free.
It's something like it's something like Afghanistan has never been conquered. It's just had a string of failed somethings.
Yeah,
because
failed
like
occupations
because like
or something
every
like that.
every single empire at some point in the last like 200 or 300 years
has
400 or 500
invaded
years,
and
has attempted to
always
invade and
ends
control
up leaving.
Afghanistan. Yeah, they
Oh,
always end up
no.
leaving.
That's what it was. It was why buy the cow when you get the sex for free. That was from fucking Mallrats.
I was thinking
So my uncle was a weird guy.
those red versus blue, where it's like, why buy the milk when you can, or get the cow for free or some shit like that. And he's like, "Did you just call my girlfriend a cow?" I was gonna say not Fury Road, Mad Max.
Yeah, Mad Max. Mad Max was one that I was really gonna like hang on to, but
Yeah,
Mad Max was on my tertiary list. If you guys had took my main choices and you had taken my secondary choices, I was ready to swoop in there with Mad Max.
yeah.
I feel like the fact that they legend all the wheeled vehicles except the Taroks, which isn't even really wheeled, kind of took away my desire to Mad Max Regiment.
yeah.
Yeah,
Because I'm like, oh man, but the Imperial Guard doesn't have cars, so that's kind of hard to do.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you could do some crazy shit. You can get back to it. Although, like, honestly, and we've talked about this before, the Mad Max army in a lot of ways is orcs.
yeah,
It is
exactly.
orcs.
Yeah.
It's totally orcs.
People have been doing. I think Zoe actually is doing Gene Stealer cult as Mad Max.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
you
could
could
work.
gene
Yeah,
steal it
that
because
could
they have a
work,
bunch
yeah.
of wheeled vehicles and
Mhm.
like repurposed technology stuff, so that works.
Right.
Yeah.
But I feel like Imperial Guard stuff is better with World War movies, things like that, rather than.
No. Zoe's doing Rat GSC.
Rat. But
Oh,
but
I,
still,
think I
that's
just
a
Stealer
saw.
cult.
feel.
That's
That's a
cool.
feel.
Yeah.
Total Recall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
Total Recall would be a good
Total
one.
Recall. Yep, we were talking about that one as like an honorable mention. The
Yep.
original, not the fucking
With the
awful
reboot.
Colin Farrell reboot.
Dude, that was not good. I
That was
watched it.
Fucking terrible.
Yeah,
It was
really-
aight.
I mean, the
Visually
I like
pleasing.
visual. Yeah, I was
I
just gonna say, I was like,
turned off my
artistically,
brain
yes.
and enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like sometimes
I-
that's all you need.
I thought it was kind of cool to
Kate-
watch,
Kate
but
I was
Beckinsale
like,
booty.
that ain't Quaid.
Kate Beckinsale booty.
Yeah,
The phones that are in their hands, like that
Right.
shit's sick. The tattoos.
yeah,
Dope.
yeah.
there's
Yeah.
some
Which
cool-
are in Warhammer.
Yep.
For those who don't know, Warhammer does have sub-skin electric tattoos. They're called electus, and they can light up and do all kinds of crazy shit.
Electus.
You-
I like that.
The one that I wanted to bring up before we dive into my movie picks and the regiment that I designed. You wanted to go last, correct, Tom?
Yeah.
If you want to go first, you can go first. But the Mummy.
No, I'm referring.
With-
Oh,
I thought
Brandon
about that.
Fraser.
mommy.
That's
Oh, yeah, man.
definitely late for the
'Cause you
the
get-
time period, but that would
It
be
is.
a good one.
But you get
Oh,
the you get
what
the
is that,
French
99?
foreign
Oh, I
98,
had
99.
one.
But you get
I
the
have one.
French
Actually-
foreign legion troops, which are which could fit into a lot of different.
Did I
Guys.
end up posting that? I found in the Imperial Guard group somebody did a French Foreign Legion.
You showed me. You were
Yeah,
showing
I
me.
showed you.
Yeah.
I think it was at the wedding. I showed
Yeah,
you
because
directly.
I literally looked. I was like, "Ooh, Foreign Legion!" Like
1999.
Yeah.
immediately, I knew what it was.
dope. But yeah, there's a guy who took a bunch of guys, painted them up desert, and
Oh
threw
my
the Foreign
God.
Legion heads on them.
Them
That's awesome.
fighting Necrons.
Right?
Oh my god, that would,
Dude,
that
be
would
so
be what it
dope.
is. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's it.
it's so
That's it.
dope.
Dude. That's the Mummy right there.
I love that movie. That is one of my
Oh, dude.
favorite movies.
One, I mean, because I was gonna talk about Indiana Jones, because it's always
Yeah.
been something very near and dear to my heart. I grew up watching Indiana Jones. And,
Indiana
like,
Jones is a rogue trader.
Yeah. Well, that was like
We
that
all
was the
know
whole
it.
thing.
This
Like, I couldn't
belongs in a
find.
museum.
Yeah, I couldn't find it.
Precisely known as somebody else's museum after they pay me for it.
Right. Because I couldn't find a way to connect it.
Yeah, to
It's
guard,
because it's too focused
difficult.
on a specific
Correct,
character,
yes.
and because he doesn't have a regular
no-
group. Like he has oddball characters that he teams
the-
up
the
with, but
reason-
not.
My whole reason for bringing it up originally, in the sense that I was gonna connect to the Guard, was the tank that they used in Last Crusade.
Because it's a World War I tank.
Yeah,
It's not
'cause
an
it's-
actual anything tank. It was made up. They built it.
Oh
from
yeah,
scratch.
yeah.
They
It's not
combined
exact.
a couple of different ideas.
Yeah, it's a modded. It's a hodgepodge of like World War I and World War II tanks,
Yeah.
and that's why I was like, that's literally fucking Imperial Guard tanks. And
That's
it's
true.
the only one of the movies that we've talked about that actually uses a tank. You know, like that
a
was
good
the whole. That was just my whole thing. I was going to talk about it. Was like that tank.
I have a hero from the universe that Indiana Jones represents. My boy Trazyn, the Infinite. Just
Oh, the
fucking
collector,
around the
dude.
country, fucking around the universe, stealing shit, and putting it in a museum.
I do have
Sorry,
one.
I had to make a Necron joke. All
I
right.
have one honorable mention movie.
Okay.
It'll be my last one. And I think Kevin, if you haven't seen this, then we're watching something tonight. It's called Virus.
Oh my god! I actually almost chose Virus.
Trying to remember.
It has what's her name in it from
Jamie Lee
fucking-
Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, True Lies.
Yeah, True Lies,
Yep.
right? So it's got Jamie Lee Curtis in it, and it's about a tugboat that basically finds this like Russian communication ship.
Oh
That's
yeah,
been-
And the robot
lightning.
thing.
Yeah.
Yep, fucking
Mhm.
dude.
Sci-fi originals, dude.
Y-
I was all
yes,
about these when I
yes.
was a kid.
See, I was gonna talk about Dog Soldiers originally, but I think that one came out after the
that would have been
90s.
a good one.
A lot
yeah,
of these came out early 2000s.
Well, so
it puts them out
Virus
of our-
was
yeah.
Virus was 99.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, it was 1999. And because I looked it up before I came over here tonight, because I was like, oh, Virus, because it is literally the main monster that they end up fighting. I don't care what anybody says, but I swear to God, that is the fucking Men of Iron.
Mhm.
That is the Men of Iron, AdMac looking motherfucker using skin, and like the whole thing is about this like lightning that is a presence.
Yeah,
It's like a space.
it's an energy being.
Yeah.
It's
And
yeah.
it literally possesses machinery, and it's like looking at people as ingredients, you know,
Mhm.
like what did the guy say? He's
Or
using us
parts.
for spare parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you
Yeah.
ever
You know what?
Have you ever seen the film Hardware? It came out in 1990. It's another science fiction horror film. So this dude is a wasteland wanderer who like part of his body has been like rebuilt and repurposed with like augmetics. He's got like a fake arm and everything. So this movie is a fucking weird ass trip, and if you can find it, you need to watch it. So Iggy Pop's in it, Lemmy's
God.
in it.
Lemmy, really?
Yeah, Lemmy's in it. So this dude finds and the idea came out of the Dredd annuals and the comic 2000 AD, the old British comic weekly anthologies with all this weird shit. This dude is wandering the wasteland and finds a skull and thinks that this skull would be dope to give to his girlfriend. His girlfriend is like a welder, like she makes art. So she takes this robot skull and she incorporates it into an art piece, and that's enough to turn whatever this fucking death machine is back on. And it starts stalking her like through her own apartment. It's a trip of a movie. It is fucking cool as shit. But like the sculpture comes alive and it tries to kill her and all sorts of stuff.
Honorable mention, Species. No.
Species.
It was like at this
Species,
point we
hell
could
yeah.
probably honorable mention for the next hour.
Oh yeah.
Species.
This is our
was-
shit.
When I was younger, the like first movie where I was like, ooh, boob, sex.
Right? Yeah, 100%. My dad
So-
was watching it.
Softcore porn
Walked
right
in,
there.
I was like, "Fuck is this?"
What's the official first rated R movie you saw?
Event
Me?
Horizon.
Event Horizon. Okay.
Oh, like all of us. I think either Silence of the Lambs or was Starship Troopers rated R? It had to be.
Oh
Yeah.
no, then it was Chucky. Yeah, it was Child's Play. I think that was like the first one I saw. Event Horizon was the
depends.
first one I
I
saw with
think-
my like family.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think it was Starship Troopers.
For
Starship
me,
Troopers was rated R.
I thought
it
so.
had to be because it's got boobs and
It's got
death and
titties in
stuff.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
didn't- yeah,
the
the
first
gore
the
in
first
that?
pair, dude, the first pair I ever saw was in a 1960 version of Romeo and Juliet, and I guarantee you guys all saw it because they used
Oh
to
yeah,
show
I remember
it.
that.
They used
She
to
had
show
huge
it in high
tits.
school class. Yeah,
Yeah,
That girl
she had
was
big old
thir-
titties.
that girl was 13 years old when they filmed that scene.
Oh shit! Oh, now I
Yeah.
feel fucked up. Whatever.
But it was filmed at a time where that
that girl had great titties. Oh, never mind. I take back.
It was,
Well, I mean, I was underage, so it's fine.
yeah, we all saw it when we were underage. That film was filmed at a time and came out at a time where rated R didn't exist. PG-13 didn't exist. It was just PG and like NC-17 or whatever.
Wait a minute. Shut the fuck up.
It was
Yeah,
one of like
that film is pre-PG-13. So PG-13 is a product of the 80s. Didn't
Dude,
exist before.
Hold up. I was fucking 10 when Event Horizon came out. I was 10.
I was too.
Wow.
I was totally 10.
No, like dude, I'm fucking like that's blowing my mind right now. Holy shit!
No, I think mine had to be. I don't think the Freddy Krueger movies were rated R. So it was either, if it was rated R, then Freddy Krueger. I specifically remember the girl being marionetted by Freddy by her veins as a child.
That's the first one.
I think that's the first one.
Man, that's some hardcore shit. That explains stuff.
It was Child's Play or Puppet Master, I think was like the first rated R movie I'd ever seen. But the first movie I saw with my family, like where my dad was like, yeah, we could watch this movie, was Event Horizon.
Gotcha.
And it was new. It was like brand new.
PG-13 exists because of the movie Gremlins and the movie Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Steven Spielberg is the cause for the creation of PG-13.
I vaguely remember like learning about that because wasn't there NCA-17 before there was PG-13?
Yep.
Yeah.
That was NCA-17, which was like you should not recommended for whatever the fuck it said.
People underneath.
You couldn't go to it unless you were 17 and you had to have permission.
So 3, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 was the one with the puppet
with the
scene.
veins. Oddly enough, this will come up real soon. The very first film that received an official PG-13 rating was Red Dawn. That's a little weird synchronicity.
Yeah, it was definitely Nightmare on Elm Street.
Well, I guess on that note, why don't we just move on?
Yeah.
So the first rated R film that I saw in the theater was Terminator 2, and probably
that was rated R.
Still one of my favorite films. Oh yeah, dude.
I don't know which one I saw in theaters. That was my first because I had to be probably a little bit older before I could actually go in the theaters. But first movie for sure. Like Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
And how old were you?
Probably like 8.
Okay, yeah, because I was like, dude, I was 6 when I think I saw Child's Play.
Terminator 2, I was...
When was the first Child's Play?
88.
So 7 or 8?
Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 for me was 87. But I don't think I saw it when it came out.
No, that's I was born in 87, so I didn't watch it at 88.
Well, and Terminator 2 is the first rated R film I saw in the theater. The first rated R film I saw like on television was probably before that, but the first one I saw in the theater that I remember is Terminator 2.
Oh, the first one I remember seeing in theaters was Black Hawk Down.
I think Scream was mine.
Oh my God, Scream is such a great film. Anyway,
I think Scream was it. Anyway, action movies.
Yes.
Back to it.
All right, guys.
Good question,
So-
though. I like that.
Yeah,
First
it
rated R film.
was pretty
That's
fun.
funny.
So I chose Red Dawn as my first film. Red Dawn was released in 1984. It is an American action film directed by John Milius, who also directed Apocalypse Now and Conan the Barbarian, with the screenplay written by Kevin Reynolds of Fandango and Risen. I don't know what Risen is. It was just one of the other films that he wrote. I do know Fandango. It stars Patrick Swayze, Charlie Sheen, and Leah Thompson, among many other people. Again, most of these films at the time had these like no names that nobody thought were going to go anywhere, and now they're in like half the shit that's been released over the last 30 years.
One of the no-name actresses in Red Dawn is the freaking mom from Back to the Future.
Right?
Like nobody even knew who the hell she was.
Yeah. Red Dawn is set sometime in the 1980s after the U.S. has isolated again and pulled out of NATO. Russia, the Cubans, and the Nicaraguans attack after having conquered at least a portion of Mexico, or at least attack through Mexico. The movie centers around a small Colorado town, with the action starting during the school day when Soviet paratroopers land on the school grounds and execute the science teacher. Having witnessed the execution, a group of students run, get supplies from a local sporting goods store, recruit the older brother, of, I believe, the owner of the hardware sporting goods store and go into
Correct.
hiding up in the mountains.
Correct.
Eventually, the students begin a run and gun resistance against the Cuban Nicaraguan forces that hold their town, naming themselves the Wolverines after their high school mascot, while being hunted down by Russian troops and Russian air support. In retaliation,
How was the newer Red Dawn?
Awful.
Really?
I mean, it wasn't terrible, but
It was
it
terrible.
definitely wasn't.
Not as good
it
as
wasn't
the original.
The original,
Dude,
Yeah.
honestly, it does not even compare to how good the first one is.
Yeah.
And the first
I
one,
have
like Red
watched-
Dawn, is dated. But
Yeah.
watching
Oh, yeah.
that movie now, you're like, ooh, you know, like
there's a
it's
couple
still
of parts
good.
that are.
Yeah, there's a couple parts you're like,
Mm.
really? Like,
Yeah.
Like cringe or
yeah.
okay.
The only thing that I can reliably remember about the remake of Red Dawn is that they have not Mac 10s. They have Tech
gonna
9.
say, goddamn.
They get Tech 9s at one point.
In the new one?
Yeah.
in the new
How the
one.
fuck
And
are you
that's like
getting
a
Tech
weapon
9
they
in
use.
Colorado.
And they're using the Tech 9s at like reliable distances that Tech 9s just don't work at.
Yeah, I was
You mean
gonna say
past
what?
10 feet?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
exactly.
Tech
Like, it's
9s
just
are,
like,
are
what the
drive-by
fuck?
guns.
Yeah.
They-
That's what that's this for.
Yeah. So in retaliation to this run-in gunning and this Wolverine activity, the Soviet forces put pressure on the town, even executing some of the prisoners who are held in re-education camps in order to get these guerrillas to surrender. Part of the plot, but basically some of the people that eventually get executed because of retaliation are actually the parents of the kids, including the owner of the sporting goods store that they took the guns from.
The primary character's dad.
Yeah. The Wolverines eventually link up with a U.S. pilot who tells them that the invasion has been stalled and the Soviet forces pretty much only hold the Midwestern states. Although D.C. and a few other major coastal cities were nuked, all sides of the developing World War III are hesitant to use nukes or biological attacks for fear of destroying too much more of the planet. I will not give away the rest of the film, but I would say it's a classic. I honestly think it's a very good film. I know that a lot of people don't agree with that statement, but I've watched it several times. I think it still resonates now. There's a bit of it that's patriotic pandering, but it's patriotic pandering from the 80s, which seems less patriotic pandering than patriotic pandering now.
I
somehow.
mean, yeah, like they're very much like America, you know, like
Propaganda.
like Aqua Teen, or not Aqua Teen, fucking Team America World
Team
Police,
America.
like they definitely get some of their lines from
America.
that movie, like
Fuck yeah.
yeah, like they definitely
Ready
get
to
some of their
save
lines from
the
that, but like.
motherfucking day, yeah.
Like like the whole dad, he's like, "Avenge me," you know. Like,
there's
it's
so
like
much.
what? Like,
Yeah.
but dude, it's such a good movie.
Tear
Like,
is.
your
It is.
days through.
it's
Now
one of
you
my
have
like,
to
it's one of my
what to
all-time
do,
favorite movies.
America.
And
Marky
the main
just
thing that I
going
liked
off.
about it, one of the best things about that
Big
movie,
tits. Fuck yeah. Bed Bath and Beyond. Okay.
Bed Bath and Beyond, fuck yeah, like the question mark,
Matt,
fuck yeah.
Damon.
The best is when they're like,
one of the
no,
best
when they're
things about
beating
the
him
film-
up, and he's like, man, Damon.
Honorable mention Team America.
Right.
right?
No, there's like the thing about Red Dawn that I actually really liked was that they were using Russian tech for the most part, like the weapons
yeah.
that they were using.
Captured
and-
Russian stuff.
Yeah,
they
and like
upgraded.
exactly, they were capturing them. So in the movie, like they're running around wearing Russian camouflage. They're using Russian weapons. Like they're using RPGs. Like that was the cool thing, was that they really like, they were like, hey, we're going to make a movie about guerrilla fighters like militia. We need to actually make them operate.
Make them
like
do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Malicious
They
stuff.
operate like guerrilla fighter militia. Like they nailed that.
I mean, one of the scenes that always stuck out as being really great is they send one of the teenage girls to go fuck with the Russian soldiers. And then she like goes and messes with them. And then she runs off into a field. And of course they're going to chase her, because where's she going to go? She's on foot. And
Right.
then as the Russians all get out of the field, oh, joke's on them. There's six
They all
guys hiding
stand
under
up,
the grass, and they all just gun them down in a perfect like horseshoe-shaped ambush and
Yeah,
just
and then
murder
they-
like 6 or 7 guys. And then
they
rather
steal
than
their
stick
shit.
around, yeah, they take the ammo off the bodies and then they just fucking leave. They
Yep.
don't like, oh, okay, now we have a tank. No. We're going to leave that tank alone,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
we're going to go fuck off into the woods so they can't find us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then every time the Russians come up into the hills, they basically play like they're Gaunt's ghosts. They hide behind trees. They take a couple shots. They move.
Crossfire.
So I think Red Dawn illustrates a lot of the youth and inexperience I feel would be present in a planetary defense force. It also deals with an invasion, and I think it'd be really easy to look at Colorado as like a small planet, and the Soviet forces as attacking heretical invasion force, kind of like the Blood Pack. The kids build their own guerrilla uniforms, as Beast just mentioned, and leave behind spray-painted messages and other signs that they have made hits against targets. They kind of brag about it. They do things that a professional military wouldn't do. A professional military isn't going to hit a target and then spray paint Wolverines on the wall. They're going to fucking hit a target and move on.
Yeah. One of the guys like impersonates the Russian soldier.
Yeah.
He's like, we're being attacked by the Wolverines. And they're like, what? Like,
Yeah,
like
right.
he's speaking Russian to them.
Propaganda.
They trade up and steal better weapons and supplies from the Soviets that they build up. A lot like a first-person shooter. You know, you start with the crowbar, but then you got an AK later.
Did you really bring
picked-
Half-Life into this right
I
now?
did. I totally did. Well, the film doesn't focus on it. It's not hard to see a resistance growing around the kids. They don't really do that, but it would make kind of sense, especially if you were to take it to like an Imperial Guard or PDF standpoint. I picked Red Dawn because I wanted to set my guard on a world that had at one point been invaded by the forces of chaos, with the existing population in PDF having fought to regain their planet over a period of time in the name of the Imperium.
Could also be Tau.
No. Oh, Tau took it over. Oh, ooh.
Re-education camps, communist greater good
damn,
stuff.
Yeah, I like that more.
Fuck, that's a
Yeah.
good one.
I like
There's a
that
reason
more.
that everybody
Yeah.
calls the Tau the space communists. and
Because most
it's
people
also
don't
because of the-
understand imperialistic Japanese history from World War II. Yes, we
Right.
get that.
it's- right,
We've been over this,
but also the greater good and all that other stuff is very applicable to socialism.
Fuck you, Kev. He's
Mostly
Kev's
the
such a guard
re-education
player.
camp.
Heart. Yeah, the greater good and all that shit.
Greater good and all that communist bullshit.
as
underlying
he's standing there with his fucking commissars and conscript. I can't believe the communist bullshit. The Tau pull. What is that? Commissar and conscript.
Well, it's like
oh,
we
those
were-
aren't communist.
we took a break and I went outside and I was like, fuck you, Kevin. I was like, I hate you, dude. I was like, you got me drinking this fucking guard Kool-Aid because there's so many cool ideas that we could do with it. And I'm like, I got into Tau because I like the infantry. And now I'm like, man, fucking guard. Like, God damn it.
Might as well make
God
some
damn
guard.
it. Like,
Can't hate on it.
So I went super obscure with my second film. I actually don't know if you guys are going to have even seen this, but I really
have
like this
not.
film. And
I have not.
it's a little dated, but you should watch it. So in 1995, a film called Screamers was released. This is a Canadian-American sci-fi horror film directed by Christian Dugway, who did Scanners 2 and 3, as well as The Art of War. And it was written by Dan O'Bannon, who wrote Alien and Total Recall. Screamers is based on a Philip K. Dick sci-fi novel called Second Variety. O'Bannon also wrote Total Recall, which is based on a PKD book called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. And to be very clear, O'Bannon wrote the original Total Recall. A lot of PKD's books, Philip K. Dick's books, have been made into, and short stories have been made into movies. Minority Report is another one. I had a whole list, and apparently Minority Report is, Blade Runner. There's a
Blade
lot.
Runner.
There's a lot of PKD books that made it into movies, and they're definitely worth checking out. Screamers stars Peter Weller and Jennifer Rubin. There are a couple of other names in it, but most of the cast is Canadian because it was a Canadian-American joint effort. So to give you guys a rundown of the plot, in the year 2078, on the mining world of Sirius 6B, a war between the New Economic Bloc, or the NEB, and the Alliance, these are miners and scientists, is waging over a wasteland that has become the planet. So the planet at one point was a little bit nicer, and now it's just a shithole because they've been fighting over it for so long. The fight started because the miners discovered that the mining was releasing toxic gases, and they went on strike. So the NEB sent in a private military to act as strike breakers and to get them back on the work train. If that is not Imperium 101, I don't know what is. The Alliance scientists, these are the scientists and miners that were rebelling, eventually created and deployed autonomous mobile swords, or AMS devices. These are artificially intelligent, self-replicating machines that hunt down and kill Neb soldiers. They are nicknamed Screamers because they make a high-pitched noise as they are getting ready to attack. Screamers are designed to hunt by tracking the rhythm of your heartbeat, so Alliance soldiers wear tabs, which broadcast a signal that cancels out the wearer's heartbeat and renders them invisible to Screamers. The film is set sometime after all of this happens, and a fragile stalemate exists between the two exhausted, incredibly poorly supplied, and undermanned armies, with both sides looking for any excuse to ceasefire or truce. Alliance Command decides to travel to Neb HQ to talk over a peace after a Neb soldier shows up on the doorstep with an invitation. He's killed by a Screamer in the scene. While they are traveling over a very cold and desolate landscape, they run into a David. This is a kid who ends up being a Screamer, and they're actually saved by a pair of Neb soldiers. They discover that Davids are a Type 3 Screamer and are attacked by a Type 1 Screamer, which is called a reptile, and they kind of look like rats with buzzsaws or razor blades in their mouths, even though they have heartbeat tabs and they are protecting the Neb soldiers they are with. During this, Peter Weller's character discovers a Neb database, which reveals that Screamers are now building themselves in giant underground factories and are orchestrating the peace talks in order to get off the planet because the Screamers are stuck on it. One of the other things that they discover is that there is a Type 3 and a Type 1 Screamer and a Type 2 Screamer, but they don't know what a Type 2 Screamer is. Without wanting to reveal the rest of the film, a lot of it centers around what a Type 2 Screamer is and the fact that the Screamers are trying to get off the planet and continue spreading. Obvious connections to the Warhammer universe. The Screamers exist in a weird place between like AdMech pseudo AI fuckery and then obviously the high-tech idea of like Men of Iron. I also think that Screamers is a great example of what happens in the 40k universe, where the Imperium is so big and often filled with such self-interested parties that two Imperial Guard units could be deployed to the same world and end up fighting each other even though they're technically on the same side. And that's kind of the way that the movie presents itself. The new economic bloc and the Alliance are against each other, but a lot of the people that are in the battle don't even know why anymore.
Sounds a lot like Terminator almost.
Kind of. It's a little... I could see that. I mean, like, honestly, O'Bannon wrote a bunch of this stuff. Like, Dan O'Bannon is very connected to a lot of... It's like Rob Schneider keeps cropping back up. Dan O'Bannon is a name that pops up in a lot of the films of this era for writing little different bits.
No, it sounds really cool. I definitely want to try and watch it.
It's a little dated. It uses stop motion and like early CGI stuff. So some of it looks a little hokey, but it's a super cool and very like claustrophobic cult horror film.
Yeah, I actually really like stop motion. The way that it looks really like disturbs me, and I like it.
The Davids are fucking creepy as shit. The like little, and they're literally like 8-year-old kids.
Little kids.
There's like a horde of them, and their mouths open up and fill with blades, and they start screaming right before they attack.
Ooh.
So yeah, in the film, the Alliance has brownish uniforms where the NEB has a lot of blue-gray. They kind of look like variations on the Valhallan troops. They just don't have the great cloaks. They're just wearing like jackets and pants, but you get that Valhallan idea and that feel because both sides are so out of money and so out of supplies that they just look shabby. Also, their guns look kind of like las guns, and they're kind of interesting because the guns have like a projectile thrower. That's a horrible way. They're like a firearm on top or on bottom, and they're a flamethrower on top. So they're dual, which is kind of cool.
That's cool.
And then they have these big like auto gun looking fucking slug throwers that are basically just like shotguns that shoot out solid projectiles, which are neat too. I picked Screamers for one of my movies because I like the idea of an abandoned mining world. In the film, a new planet has actually been found with a better mineral power resource. That's the whole thing. The mineral that was on Sirius 6B is like the next evolution in like power. And they're like, oh, clean energy forever. And then they're like, but it kills everybody because it releases radioactive toxic material when you mine it. They found a better mineral on a new planet, and the Alliance and the NEB have basically moved on, and they're continuing to use Sirius 6B as a proxy war to basically continue their fight, which just seems so Imperium of man. Like the Imperium has this planet, two houses are fighting over it, they want something, but nobody knows why anymore.
Oh, this has totally got the RoboCop dude in it.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
Peter Weller.
Yeah. Oh shit. Okay.
He's in
Yeah,
a lot.
Screamers totally
Peter-
went in a different direction than I thought it was.
Peter Weller is in a lot of this stuff too. Yeah,
love that guy.
Screamers is a good film. So I came up with an Imperial Guard regiment based on both of these films. So it starts on the planet of Helic 5, which was a mining world slated to become a forge world about 100 years into its development. However, the subsector near the Halo stars was swallowed by the Warhounds of Karnas and their allies, the Wordbearers. Although Helic 5 was seen as a strategic loss to the Imperium, it was so far behind enemy lines that it became little more than a postscript note in the Administratum's calculations for the loss. However, the citizens of the planet stayed mostly loyal to the Imperium and began a bloody worldwide civil war against the Traitor Guard Regiment, the Warhounds of Karnas. Although they were initially committed to an open and brutal conflict, the Helican freedom fighters were pushed further and further out of the major cities and effectively banished from the planet's spaceports and other logistical areas to reach space. With the planet so far behind enemy lines, Imperial support slowly drained to a trickle and eventually dried up completely. And about 10 years into the conflict, the original brutal and open war became a string of very small hit-and-run guerrilla strikes as word-bearer troops, individual troopers, were being increasingly used to quell the population's centers every time an uprising happened. So, like, the major cities kept fighting, like, sporadically, but, you know, you deploy one Space Marine in a city that's subjugated by Traitor Guard, and that one Space Marine just walks in and blesses a couple hundred people, and that uprising is going to die out.
Yeah.
So eventually the word-bearer threat grew enough that it called the attention of some Space Marine chapter. I didn't decide which one. And Space Marines were deployed to the region, retaking the planet. Since then, the Helican Warhawks is the name I'm going with right now, but I'm not sure if Helican Warhawks is what I would want to keep because I used Warhounds of Karnas as my Traitor Guard regiment. But the Helicans are known for utilizing the brutal weapons that they were able to capture from the Warhounds of Karnas. So they look a little bit, they've got that Red Dawn-ish look where they're kind of using the trappings of the enemy, but like the spikes and obviously the 8-pointed stars and everything is missing. They would have gotten rid of all of that because they're Imperium citizens. But they've got that kind of like rougher look, that kind of like harder edged armor. I also picture them using a lot of chain weapons because they've probably like raided, you know, the Warhounds of Karnas are probably using a lot of word bearer stuff for like terror reasons. So as they take over their
all of the chain axes,
all of the chain axes, right? I kind of like that idea. And I like the idea of I created 2 guard regiments. I have the Traitor Guard of the Warhounds of Karnas, which I can develop further. And then I have the Helican, so like pups, something pups, not sky pups. Like what's I need to come up the Helican something. Like they got to have a name, and I don't want to do the Helican Wolverines because it seems too fucking easy.
Hell dogs,
Hell
dogs,
yeah.
Hell
Stay away
dogs
from.
of
I'd stay
Helica.
away from pups. You don't want to. You've got hounds.
I mean, you
and
could
then
just call them
pups.
hellhounds.
No, because you already have hounds. So that's what I'm
Oh,
saying.
that's
Like
true.
you have
Warhounds
hounds,
of Karnas.
pups. Pups is way too much of like a
Dog.
Well, no, but it's like a
thinking like-
subordinate. You know.
Yeah,
like-
that's what I was thinking. Like that, like they're the underdogs.
Yeah, which is fine, like to do, but you don't want to name it something like pups.
Oh,
you
what
know?
about the
hell nuts?
What about the Helican War Foxes or the Helican Striking Foxes or something?
Yeah, I mean anything. Yeah.
Mutts.
The Helican Mutts. I like that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, Mutts is pretty good. I do like that one.
Yeah, I mean, I dig it.
Yeah, but I like the idea of and I definitely used it. I mentioned to these guys before we started when we were doing our production meeting earlier that I almost changed my films because as I was getting into Red Dawn and I was utilizing it in this method, I realized that Red Dawn wasn't super conducive to like my initial concept in my head. But I realized like that wasn't the exercise. The exercise
about
was to
that.
pick 2 movies, not to force 2 things to meet what I wanted.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just gonna say I was like, that's not what it was.
Yeah. Set the constraints when you're developing something, set your constraints or work within constraints, because if you set constraints and work within constraints, you'll often find a lot better flow and a lot better inspiration. And oddly enough, one of the times that this really clicked for me was when I started doing stuff with Wasteland, because Wasteland has very, very specific rules, and you can fight against those rules because, you know, obviously video games and other media and everything suggests that post-apocalyptic stuff can have ray guns and aliens and all that shit. Or you can embrace those rules and really push your creativity within those constraints. And I think that as a creative writer and as a creative person, I find sometimes that I come up with much more interesting dynamic ideas when I set constraints for myself rather than when I go ham hog and I do whatever.
Yeah,
And those of you in our painting contest might have felt this with our last painting contest, because we let you do whatever you wanted, and a bunch of you suffered from over analysis paralysis.
Yeah, kind of like I was saying earlier, you know, aim small, miss small. So if you have small, like a somewhat constricting parameters, it kind of keeps you on target.
I like having the parameters, because then you end up with something that's, I mean, for me anyway, like, you know, sky's the limit when you think about stuff. So you can end up with some completely outlandish things where you're really stretching to make sense.
Right.
Whereas when you have the parameters and the restrictions, it's like, oh, this makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot more believable, I guess, is like kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I feel like putting either some kind of restrictions on there to keep you from going too far, or you know, some kind of anchor point that's very grounded lets you, you know, create something that's believable.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is down to, if you're going to set yourself a writing exercise, you're going to set yourself a creative exercise. If you give yourself constraints, you're going to put yourself in a position where you're thinking through the problem rather than where you're inventing a problem in your own mind.
Yeah, it almost establishes like a false sense of foundation of where you can build from. So
yeah, I mean, I didn't think for my stuff that I'm going to talk about in a minute, I didn't really want to do what I did for what I did, but it literally fell into place.
It started clicking into place.
Well, just because I picked two things that I liked, I picked two movies that I liked, and then I was like, oh, that makes sense. And then it was like, oh, click here, because these are the rules, you know. And then it ended up leading me down this path. I didn't create it. It just led me.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of that, Beast,
my turn.
Hit us with them deets. Hit us with them stuffs.
Okay, so first movie, you'll have to do my thingy because my phone died.
Okay. Do you want me to do the first movie and the the starring crap?
Yeah. So first movie I chose is actually Dune, the original film. Ryan, take it away.
So Dune, the original, is 1984. It is an American epic science fiction film written and directed by David Lynch of Twin Peaks and Mulholland Drive and a lot of other stuff. And it is based on the 1965 Frank Herbert novel of the same name. It stars Kyle MacLachlan, Kenneth McMillan, Patrick Stewart, and Sting, or Gordon Smith, depending on how you want to refer to him. There are a lot of other actors in it, but I had to bring up Patrick Stewart and
Patrick
Sting.
Stewart, man. Patrick Stewart. He's in it relatively briefly, but he's awesome.
He's in it.
Oh, yeah.
He's totally
I
in
always
it.
forget he's in it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
he's the
Star
one.
Trek?
He's the one that straight up goes Atreides.
Yep.
Yeah.
So basically the movie is Ryan even wrote in the notes for this thing that it has a stupid amount of connections that literally plug and play to 40k.
Like all over the place.
Yeah, like you could even
like 80%.
Yeah, you could even argue that they got the idea for 40k from Dune.
The Imperium of Man in 40k is, and they've openly admitted, based on the Imperium Shaddam Emperor of the Dune world.
Yeah. So the whole premise of Dune is there is an emperor of mankind, and there are noble houses that lead. God, what is the word for it? They basically are in charge of a planet.
Or fiefdoms.
Fiefdom, that's it.
Yeah.
They're given fiefdoms, right? And great houses, like two of them in particular, are the Harkonnen and the Atreides. And Atreides and Harkonnen, they don't get along so well. And that's basically where this movie kind of takes place, is over a world called Arrakis, and the Harkonnens had been basically taking control of it. It was once kind of a paradise world, and they even use these terms and it dried up. All the water dried up, and then it showed spice. They have access to spice, and spice is used in fuel to travel through space.
Yeah, spice is the active ingredient that allows navigators to fold space-time for faster light travel.
Yeah, so literally like plug and play.
Isn't it like it allows them, if I remember right, it allows them to then see like both spaces in space-time?
Yeah.
Like both points, like the point they're at and the point they're trying to get to simultaneously. And then by seeing both of that allows them to like fold the 2 points into one. And yeah.
And navigators are a mutated psychic strain of humanity.
Yeah. And then, like, dude, there's just like
direct relations.
There's so
and
much.
Not even that, but the navigators have a guild.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then there's the Bene Gesserit, which are
psychers,
basically psychers.
Jedi psychers.
Yeah, they like.
I was actually thinking about this morning. I was like, man, I never realized that like the Force and the voice, man.
Oh yeah,
they didn't even try.
Yeah.
Like
these are not the droids you're looking for.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I was like, this is not the droids you're looking for. Throw yourself out of the window. Throw yourself out of the ship.
Literally take a step back and fuck yourself
in the face. There's enough connections here that we've talked about this in the past, and we've definitely talked this about in production meetings. At some point, we're gonna do a round table where we just talk about how Dune and 40k stuff.
So of course I had to pick. Of course I had to pick Dune.
I picked the low hanging fruit.
Yeah, I picked
the other low hanging fruit.
But basically, like Dune is another name for Arrakis. And the Paul, he's like the son for the house, right? So the Harkonnens betray. God, there's so much.
There's a lot of
lot of
space opera plot
politics
where there's a setup.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Game of Thrones stuff.
Yes. So here's the thing, right? The movie, fantastic. They've made a remake of it. The remake of it that is out now is phenomenal.
Beautiful.
Is very good.
Phenomenal. Only time I've ever seen in a film, by the way, where an ornithopter makes sense.
Oh my God, the ornithopters are making the speed.
Only time I've ever seen in a film where it makes sense.
The sound of
the dragonfly things.
Yeah. I'll have to dig it up and send it to you, but they talked to the like special Corridor Digital, which is a fantastic YouTube channel that deals a lot with like VFX stuff. And
I remember when they were nobody.
I've met them. Sam and Nico are pretty cool guys. Their show, VFX Artists React, which is pretty good. They have an episode where they talk to the dude who designed the ornithopters, and he literally goes, we wanted to make them look as real as possible, so we studied how animals that have this flight characteristic work.
Yeah.
So they built it from a biological perspective, not a mechanical.
Well, and that's how you make an ornithopter. You have to do that.
Because the whole concept is it flies only because real animals can fly that way.
Yeah. But
and then it's got a rocket booster when you need that.
Right. But anyway, so the whole thing about this film is that they encounter like an indigenous personnel called the Fremen, right? And the Fremen have like these suits that they wear where it like wicks body moisture away. It basically allows them to survive in the super harsh condition of the desert. And they are desert fighters. Like they are literally like the epitome, like nobody's better living in the desert than they are.
And they all have blue eyes.
They all got blue eyes because they're tripping on spice all the time. And they all have these knives that they get from these giant sandworms that live in the sand, and the knives are made out of like the teeth of this thing. Yeah. And basically it's all about like an uprising and like coming to fruition, fighting against the emperor.
Knives.
Right. Yeah. But the biggest thing about it that like I take a lot from it is like households, right? They operate in houses. You know what else operates in houses? Fucking Imperial Knights.
Right.
So, like, this is where I'm going, right? Now, I've actually really connected my two for my custom regiment, like, into the second movie I chose. But the first one, basically you're getting desert fighters, so, of course, what is everybody thinking of, right? Talaran?
Well, and I mean, even the Fremen even bury themselves under the sand to wait for the enemy to cross over them and then burst out and attack, which is totally a Talaran thing, too. Well,
Right.
The Toleron totally rip on the Fremen.
Yeah, well, that's
I mean, that was the point. And if
Yeah.
you even go into the lore of the Toleran, you remember their world was invaded by Chaos Space Marines after it was fucked up.
After it was fucked up. Yeah, exactly.
Chaos Harkonnen Marines.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And they had to adapt to desert warfare.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god!
And then they kicked out the totally not Harkonnens.
Right. Exactly.
Can you an AdMech army? You know how there's the AdMech dude that's like kind of like fat floaty ball guy. Can you imagine
your
making?
fart actually came over on there?
Yeah, totally.
I know.
Can you imagine making a Baron Harkonnen like a
Oh
big
my God.
fat floating
out
Baron
of like a
Harkonnen
Death
is an
Guard
AdMech
model?
dude? Dude, it'd be
With
so
fucking
dope.
Out of call?
with
Well, you'd
cherubs
use
that look like him,
use AdMech and Death Guard bits to kit bash something gross.
with cherubs.
Oh.
There's I can't remember the name of the model, but he was in the kill team. He's like a fat magus.
The Dominus.
The
Magos
Dominus, thank you.
Dominus.
He's
Yeah,
the-
has
he's
the big
the-
fat belly.
Oh,
Yeah.
And he's
yeah.
literally floating. So just take that model and make him a little bit
Well,
more
and
opulent.
I mean, even too, the Harkonnens straight up are out of Nurgle. Like
Oh yeah.
Big Papa Harkonnen, Baron Harkonnen is like super plaguey in the
Oh yeah, he's
original
gross.
film.
Yeah,
you know?
he's super gross.
yeah.
Yeah. And the Sardaukar come from a death world that trains elite troops only, and it's
And
the
they're called the
primary-
Emperor's Blades. Like,
The Emperor's
Yeah.
Executioner.
Yeah, right.
They're
Like-
essentially just space wolves.
No.
There's-
They're fucking custodies.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
totally custodies.
They're basically
death
custodies
planet.
without being super soldiers.
Yeah.
But they're not his personal guard, though.
Yeah. Well,
They're
no,
just
his
his
army.
executioner.
Yeah. But well, and the other thing too, right? So the one thing about them that's like really cool in Dune is like they have basically Geller fields around themselves.
Yeah,
And,
personal
like,
shields are a big thing.
like and like their whole thing is like that's why they still incorporate melee weapons, you know. So they're all knife fighters and sword fighters, and that's it. Like the slow blade penetrates the deepest, you know. Like that's like their whole thing.
It's the refractory.
Yeah,
What's the refractory that the Space Marines captains can take? It's like a refractory field. It's
Iron Halo.
They have iron halos, but you're talking about refractor shields, like
Yeah,
for,
refractor shields,
Imperial
yeah.
Guard.
But
Yep.
the other thing in Dune is that it's one of the few sci-fi action films about the future that completely doesn't have AI.
Mhm.
And the reason is that in Dune, the AI turned against them.
called the
right,
Men of
like-
Iron.
Yeah, and it was
By the way.
they weren't called the Men of Iron, they were called something else. I actually remember the name, but I can't right now.
What's funny is I saw it like a couple hours
Yeah, it
ago.
was
I
like-
remember reading,
Yeah, it
going
was
through what
it was
called.
literally like the men of like automated intelligence. Like it was something along those lines.
the Butlerian Jihad.
Oh, the Butlerian
yes, the
Jihad.
Butlerian Jihad. That's it.
That's
yeah.
the name. That's the name of the conflict. The AI stuff aren't called that.
No, but that's like
Well, because the robots used to be butlers, as in
Subordinates,
subservience,
yeah.
and so that's what they called it.
yeah. Then the AI basically rebelled, very much like in 40k.
It's called it's called the machine. God damn it, Machine Crusades. Ugh.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously all these connections, right? Amazing movie. I mean, there's so much in the Toleran, there's so much in the 40k universe in it that it just like clicks. The second movie that I chose, I don't think anybody here has actually seen it.
I have not.
It was one of my favorites, and it's a very popular like British film from the time. And it's called Bravo 20. And then you want to tell them about it. So the big thing is that it's recorded as a miniseries, but when I saw it, it was later and it was made into a full, you know, feature film.
So it's a 2-hour television miniseries that was broadcast in 2 1-hour parts on January 3rd and January 4th in the United Kingdom, but it was released as a full-length feature film here. It is based on the 1993 book of the same name by Andy McNabb. It stars Sean Bean, Kevin Collins, and Stephen Nicholson. I'm sorry, not Nicholas. There were several other actors in it, but pretty much the only name that jumped off the page at me was Sean Bean.
Yeah, Stephen's another, like they're all British actors. They're all
Gotcha.
fairly popular British actors. So basically, Annie McNabb, right? It's based on a true story. Annie McNabb was an SAS soldier, and for people who don't know, the SAS are the Special Air Service, which is the British Special Forces. sort of comparatively to like the Green Berets or Navy SEALs. There we go. They're very similar to the American Navy SEAls.
Yeah,
England has the SAS, and anybody who plays Call of Duty knows about it.
Now, is SAS and commandos the same thing?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
Commandos were technically created before the SAS.
Okay.
Right. Commandos were like the grandfathers, right? They were the basically sort of Marines. They were Royal Marines that were then turned into commandos.
Okay. Proto SAS.
Correct. Yeah.
Got
and
it.
then SAS came out. So now the commandos.
And they were like, instead of dropping you off with rowboats, we're going to throw you out of an aeroplane.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing is, right? So commandos kind of became more of like a Navy thing.
Okay.
Right.
That makes
So
sense.
they're-
And
well,
so that's like
commandos-
Navy
commandos-
SEALs versus Army Rangers.
Commandos are Marines.
Right.
Now British commandos are Marines.
Okay.
They're, like higher Marines, and the
Mhm.
SAS is its own special division.
Right. Special Air Service.
Well, it basically answers specifically to the SOE, which is like a special
Strategic Operations Command or whatever.
a special
Yeah.
operations executive.
Yeah.
So, and now the SAS had been created right at the end of World War II,
Right.
right? And during Operation Desert Storm, right? This was the first time the regiment had been together since World War II. People were put into the SAS, but they had not seen it.
They hadn't seen a real war.
So they were being shipped out to Desert Storm, and they were super ill-equipped. They had very little machinery. They had very little weaponry, but they were basically sent out, and what they were doing was they were doing scud hunt, right? So the Iraqi, or Saddam Hussein, like his soldiers, their main thing was they had scud launchers, which were like giant guided missiles.
Yeah, and they move them around and try to hide them all the time.
Exactly, yeah. So the job of SAS at that time and the American Delta Force were to hunt these scud launchers and knock them out. So Bravo 20 is the code name of the unit, right, which Andy McNabb was in charge of, and they were sent out behind enemy lines to, knock out scuds. They were compromised. So they were found out by basically like a sheep herder, and he had told then, the army in the area, and they were under attack. So their whole thing is literally just them killing an entire army's worth of dudes while they're just trying to get out. And this is like a true story. Only I think it was like 2 or 3 guys actually survived out of the entire unit.
Oh, wow.
And they were all like I said, one of them had actually made it to like the border, and the other guys like Andy McNabb and one of the other dudes were actually caught and tortured. And this is like the whole movie's about this. Like Sean Bean plays Andy McNabb, and it's all about this like interaction. And like this movie is just your general like special forces behind enemy lines, like trying to get to safety while being attacked by like just constant onslaught.
It almost sounds like a lone survivor.
Very. I mean, basically, yeah. I mean, these guys went through pretty much the exact same thing. And dude, they went up against tanks. Like these SAS dudes were literally being chased by BMPs and tanks, while they were trying to escape. Like one of the guys was like hiding under a metal grate, on this bridge while like the whole army was driving over him. One of the other guys had ended up like in this river, and he was trying to drink the water, but it was contaminated by like a plant that was nearby, like a power plant. And like all of his gums had like receded, like these guys went through fucking hell. And like the firefights they were in were freaking nuts. I mean, the movie does this really good. It kicks off like right away. And they're literally like leapfrogging, right? Like they gather all their shit. They're like, well, we've been compromised. We got to get out. They gather all their shit, and they're like, we got to move. And they start moving across basically this like desert. Like it's just flat, dried up desert. And the Iraqi forces are basically like, what's up? They roll on them with trucks and tanks and BMPs, and they literally like they put their bags down and they're like, stand to, and then they just engage them. Like they just are straight up like, whole army division coming after us. Cool, us like 8 dudes, stand to, and they put their bags down. They put and they just start shooting, and then they advance. Like these dudes straight up just are like, holy shit, man, they're shooting at us. Let's go to them, and then they leapfrog towards them and knock out the whole division.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
Okay.
dude, it's crazy. And Andy McNabb is like the whole soap from Call of Duty. What's the guy with the chops? The main dude.
Call of
I
Duty?
thought that was soap.
No, it's
no,
like
it's Mick something.
McTavish or whatever.
Yeah, McTavish.
Basically,
Tavish.
that dude is modeled after Andy McNabb.
Yeah, yeah. I knew he was a
Oh,
somebody.
interesting.
Yeah.
I was like,
Okay,
that is
okay.
that is totally supposed to be a real
Andy
person.
McNabb is like in the world of like British like celebrity military dudes, like
He's
Homeboy's
up
the
there.
top.
Mm.
You know.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, so it's an awesome movie. It's a little dated, you know, but like it's just a badass movie, and like it's one of those movies where Sean Bean doesn't die. You know?
Really?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah, he
it
plays-
is it a real movie if Sean Bean doesn't?
Right. But yeah, it's a phenomenal movie. It's definitely got like, for me, it's got all the British like dry humor in it. That's so good. Like one of the guys is like taking a shit into a bag, and he's like, "Oh, come over and help me out, mate. This one's a squirty one," you know.
Oh my god, man.
And then he like takes the bag of shit and puts it in like Andy McNabb's bag, and then he's like goes to put it on. He's like, "From now on, everybody else carries their own shit." You know, and he hands it back to him, and it's like that's dumb but really funny, you know.
Yeah, right.
So my guard regiment, right now, it's just sheer coincidence that this is a desert. You know, it's in the desert. So my idea, which with the help of Kevin, as we were just like fucking about with this thing, you know, we all know that I have an Imperial Knight house that I've worked with lore combining Disney.
Right.
So what we kind of came up with using Talaran as like a reference point in Guardsmen is the Guard Regiment is the House Disitine 118th Agrabeshian Guard.
Okay.
And the regiment itself is called Raja's Tigers. And the whole thing, right, is that it's from Agrabesh, which is Aladdin's
Play on Agrabah.
planet.
Okay.
Yeah, play on Agrabah, right? Desert. Aladdin's planet in the Disitine system, right?
I think it would
is
be Agarabeshi.
Agrabeshi.
Yeah.
Agrabeshi Guard.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's
because like you say Afghani, not
Yeah, you've got-
Afghanistanian.
Yeah.
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
Like I called them the Helicans rather than the Helic. Yeah.
So what were
Yeah,
you saying?
that's
It's Agra.
Agrabeshi.
Agrabeshi. Yeah, because the planet is called Agrabesh.
Right.
So Agbesh.
Agrabeshian.
Well, it's not.
Would
It's
be
like
like-
Canadian, right?
Right.
Well, that's where it would be Agrabeshian Guard, or
Yeah.
Agrabeshi would be like they're Agrabeshi, or I'm Agrabeshian.
Yeah. That's dope, dude. I'm like, here's this word that we made up, and it makes sense.
Right?
That's cool.
They are the guard regiment of that. They're the humans of that world.
Okay.
Right? And they go with the knights, you know, obviously like not in my whole story, but that's how they operate. They defend the knights as the foot soldiers. Well, the Raja's Tigers, you know, the 118th Raja's Tigers play on Raja, which is the tiger that Jasmine has in Aladdin. They are kind of like a special forces regiment, right? They're known for being the desert fighters. They wear suits that, you know, basically you can think of like still suits, you know, like from Dune. They are able to like they can sustain themselves in the desert for prolonged periods of time.
Okay.
Now, in order to become a member of Raja's Tigers, like the 118th, you have to kill a lycanthrope. And a lycanthrope is what did you say, a bipedal?
I thought I told you to stop making up
Yep,
animals.
Bipedal,
I was like,
Right.
bipedal 6-armed tiger.
Yeah, 6-limbed tiger.
Yeah, 6-limbed tiger.
So it actually stands on 2 feet and has
Oh.
4 arms.
Or
I'm gonna
it can
fuck
stand
you
on
up,
its
boy.
back 4 feet and just box you out with the top
Right.
2.
Dude, it can fuck you up, boy.
So one of the things that we eventually we're going to talk about in these podcasts is making up animals,
Beasties.
right? And
Yep.
you know, I want to make up animals for every world that I have in the system, right? So this is one now. Now the key about this animal, right, is that it can literally lay itself flat into the sand, right?
Oh, like those spiders that like
Yep.
shimmy
Yeah.
themselves.
Yep.
Oh.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh.
Now this
But now
thing
think
is,
of that, but like with the predatory instincts of a big cat.
yeah, right.
But
and
no,
they're
think of that,
huge.
but a big cat. Like I
right?
don't know why you made the distinction, Kevin.
Like,
It's
and
already
they're
horrifying.
big. Like they're not. I mean, they're not like super like comedically huge. But if you've ever seen an actual liger, that's what size they are.
Oh, okay. Liger throw.
They're the size of a
Oh,
liger.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Gotcha,
lion
gotcha.
tigers. So they're
Yeah.
they're
Yep, yep.
big. They're big. Now, in order, when you become an initiate of this like guard regiment, you have to kill one. And
Okay.
when you do, you take one of its teeth and make a knife out of it.
Oh, nice. Okay, so you get your Chris knife. I like it.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically, yeah. But it's basically, they call them Ligan knives, right? So they're all like, that's how, you end up joining the regiment, is you have to do that. So they become expert fighters, and they wear a tuft of the liger as a like cloak. So their uniforms are that like milky white, that is, they're black tops with like the milky white pants.
Okay.
If you've seen Aladdin, what the guard, like the Sultan's
Yeah,
guard kind of
right.
wear,
Sultan. Okay.
it's like an off-white. So that's their pants. They have black tops, and they have like a cloak that they wear. It's like a head wrap, like a shamag, but it's the tiger colors.
Okay.
And they use a Talaran pattern lasgun, which I forget what they're called. They're basically bullpups.
Mm.
Yeah, they're cool looking.
Yeah, and the so also too, to keep in mind too, these lycanthrope teeth are curved, right? So their knives look very much like kukris or scimitars,
Oh, they got that bend
sort
to
of
'em.
like Lawrence of Arabia, right?
Yeah.
So that's what these knives kind of look like, but they're their teeth.
That's
Saber
dope.
ligans.
That's
Yeah,
super cool.
exactly.
Saber lycanthropes.
Yeah, but yeah, that's what their whole thing is, that they're one specific regiment from Agrabesh,
Mm.
where they're like, those are like, you've got your regular line fighters, whatever. These are the dudes that when you're standing in like, what do they call that when you're doing like the assembly, the march,
These are like
Parade
your. These are like
parade
your.
formation? They're the ones at the front with like the like fancy uniforms with the tiger like sashes
Tiger
when they're
sash.
when they're in like parade.
Are
have
you
they have
talking
a
like
sash.
tiger, like orange black stripe?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, straight up like tiger. you know?
Gotcha.
And that's
these
like
These guys are like your Catachan devils, or
Yeah.
your Acadian veterans. kind
they're
of.
basically like recon,
Okay.
like forced recon, like super crazy, like special ops. Like they're
Okay,
the
so these
ones
aren't the
that-
typical guardsmen.
No, they're a regiment. They're a specific regiment that are sent in.
Okay,
like
I see. I was gonna say, man, that's a lot of dead lycanthropes. If
Right?
that was like a normal guard.
no, they're
thing.
one regiment.
Gotcha.
But so there's probably like 300 of them.
Right.
But that's basically like, you have your standard infantry in the Agrabeshi. Is that what you
Yeah,
call it?
they're gonna have their own like planetary defense. They're gonna have their own like standard guard.
Yeah,
guys.
the standard guardsmen's, which are basically like they have the same color uniforms, but they're regular guardsmen. They have regular head covers, pretty much like Talaran, just with black tops. And then these guys are like the recon, like they're the dudes that like show up and they fuck shit up.
That's dope, man. I
Well,
can't-
because too, like knights don't need.
These would be like the Casterkins of
Yeah,
Cadia.
because knights
Yeah.
don't necessarily need like full tank combat armies, because that's what their knights are for.
Right.
The
Right.
infantry are more to like hold the sectors and stuff. Well, the Raja's Tigers, they're the ones that like go out, scope out an area, and are like, hey, roll in the forces, and then that's when the knights will roll in.
Mm.
And they keep guard of like the houses, like their towns, like the royalty, the noble houses are guarded by these guys.
Okay.
That's
The regular
cool.
soldiers are the police and stuff. These guys are the honored guard, basically.
I dig it, dude.
That's
I
awesome.
like it.
Yeah, I honestly like, it's gonna be dope hearing more as you develop, and as a tease to listeners, we are going to get into some crusade stuff soon, and the crusade that we're gonna talk about crusades, where they came from, a little bit of history. We're gonna talk about how to make them a little bit, and then we are gonna talk about Beast's Disitine stuff from a crusade angle, because he has some crusade stuff that's in the works. So there's some stuff coming up. That about wrap us up with our movies and our guard picks. Anything we?
I mean, I guess I could honorable mention a little bit of, just to tease out, because I know eventually we'll get to going over all my actual
Guard
stuff. For my
Yeah.
actual lore.
Oh, that's gonna be
At
its
some
own like
point.
episode.
Oh yeah, that'll
Yeah,
be
yeah.
in that'll we'll
Just getting its
slot
whole
that in.
don't honorable mention.
Well, no.
Honorable mention my
Episode
own
3
guard.
for tonight. No.
I'm gonna honorable mention. my
Honorable
damn
mention
self.
my own shit. No, but honorable mention. like I know the movies themselves are new, but it's mostly a historical reference. But you can, as we're talking about going over these things, but like one of the things that I used as mine is the East India Trade Company as portrayed kind of in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Yeah, they're not 80s action movies, but they're quirky and they're fun and they're a little over the top in their own right. Yeah. But if you see how the East India Company operates, they're under mandate from the government, but they aren't the government. But they have all the same equipment and they have the manpower and the money to do it, and they're out here to secure profit in the name of the empire.
I like it.
And that's why they're out there doing what they're doing and taking over towns and doing that stuff. And so like that was kind of my like originally, like a long time ago, I wanted to make like they were Cadians and they got left out on the frontier and now they've become their own independent, you know. I was like, that's cool, but I don't know. That's gonna take a lot of kit bashing and stuff. So I'm like, all right, so I'll just smash together a bunch of whatever I can get. But then I used the East India Trade Company kind of concept to be like, okay, so it's a rogue trader that owns all this military hardware, and the actual lore for rogue traders is almost identical to what caused the East India and West India Trade Companies. It's essentially corporate privateering.
So your guard is basically the East Galactica.
Yeah, East Galactica Trade Company. Yeah,
East Galactica Trade Company.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but it's as simple as that. You take one real world / narrative influence, and you can run with it as long as you want.
And it doesn't matter where you're at when you run with it. And the only reason I bring this up is because Kevin just brought it up. But in my fantasy world, Galdor, which is designed for use in Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder that I've been writing for the last 20 years, I have the Assyrian, or not, the Ezran Empire. And the Ezran Empire controls a corporation called the Assyrian Trading Corporation, and
I'm guessing they have a monopoly on caravans and they're
dwarves. They're dwarves who control the ocean,
and obviously the underground highways and
they control the largest naval empire. Well, in my world, dwarves, because they're underground and they deal with a lot of like metal and stuff, they're also the science and reasoning people, so they control the largest naval empire in the world.
Okay.
At some point, if we get there, if we break, if we kind of stray into role playing, in general, I'll talk about that stuff. I literally have an entire years of podcast stuff.
Oh, I bet.
Galdor, because I've been writing it for so long. Guys, that's where we're at. I mean, this is how you can build this stuff, and we want to see what you guys build. Take these ideas, run with it, come up with a guard regiment of your own, come up with a Traitor.
I want to see a Lost Boys guard regiment.
Dude, right?
Lost Boys Guards, Bangarang, dude. I want it. Yep. I want it so bad. Like fucking Commander Rufio.
Hey, you know what? Isn't that technically a Disney movie? It is.
It is. It is. Yeah. No, so I was gonna. So if nobody else does it, I'm gonna do it for I'm gonna do it. Traitor Guard.
There you go.
Oh, you could have some scions.
Yeah.
Dude, so hear me out. The gears are turning. This is partially inspired by a post I saw earlier, but it would work for this really well. Scion torsos, Catachan bear arms.
Okay, I'm interested.
Scions all have deep strike. The Lost Boys just fucking ambush pirate people all over the place in Neverland. Mm-hmm. Just come out of nowhere, and then they dip it back into the trees.
Mm-hmm.
So you do the Scion bodies. You give them the Catachan buff arms, and you give them some like Escher mohawks. You use Escher heads,
and that's why they're just the Lost
Boys. They're just the Lost Boys, and you just run like a patrol of them along with the rest of your shit, and they just show up to bangarang on shit.
That's their whole thing.
They're specialists.
I'm into it.
Yeah,
I'm into it.
All right, guys. So
that wouldn't be a whole regiment. That would just be like
one team, because
it wouldn't make sense to have a whole army of those guys, but to have like a small.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
You've got Rufio.
There was also a part of me that just wanted to make child soldiers. That was the thing I kind of wanted to do. Anyway, Ryan, take us out. Sorry, we're gonna keep going on this.
No worries. Yeah, so we want to see the guard regiments that you build. We want to hear your guard lore. send it our way. As always, we also want your ghost stories. We want your cryptid experiences. We want your questions about Warhammer 40k. We want your Adaptus Astartes lore. Gosh,
Adeptus.
Whatever. Send us your sisters lore. It doesn't matter.
Send us your sisters' lore.
Yeah, send us your sisters.
We want to send us your sisters. We want to hear it all. You can reach us by email at underthehiveofmadness@gmail.com or jimdarkgaming@gmail.com. You can also join and get involved with our growing community over on Discord. We talk about pretty much everything over there. Hobby progress, official lore, homebrew lore, tactics, and hobbies, video games. These guys are playing video games all the time. We're all playing video games all the time.
Yeah, we did recently create a new voice chat for co-op gameplay, single gameplay. If you want to just chat with people while you're playing games, we've actually got a couple of those, and it's pretty an active way. I mean, Kevin and I are on there all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're on there actively gaming like 3 days a week.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm usually crying because I'm having my ass kicked over and over and over again in Dark Souls 3, and I didn't think anybody wanted to hear that, but I guess there's a kink for everybody. Right?
You brought that upon yourself, good
You
sir.
did this. You did this
That
to yourself.
sounds like
You
a
dug your
major
grave.
problem.
Now you gonna sleep in it.
Major you problem.
So our website is up and should be getting spit, shined, and polished daily, but you can find that as well as other things that we do around the internet as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, things like that, TikTok. There will be links to both of those down in the show notes so you can check them out. If you want to help the podcast grow, like and review us wherever you get your podcast fix. We are on Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Castbox, Stitcher, Google. Facebook now has a podcast RSS feed. We are out there. Please, 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 if you are listening to this on your favorite device, rate us, review us, and share us through that device and through that system. The way that we grow is by word of mouth, and you guys are our awesome stars who help us get there. If you would like to be a little bit more involved, you can find us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/underthehiveofmadness. All Patreon members get access to a video podcast, which is an unedited version of what you're listening to now, where our lovely faces are involved, and we usually talk about some extra stuff at the beginning. For instance, today we actually went over some criminality and drugs that may or may not be involved in the Hive. So if you want that extra content, if you want that extra content, that's the way to get it. There's also some other stuff there. Perks come in the form of access to our quarterly painting contest. We have some art assets that you can download and use to get some things printed out for yourself, such as objective markers and stuff like that. We are always working on something extra and the next thing that we can bring to the table as far as rewarding our patrons. And the next thing that we are trying to do is if we can get to about 30 or 40 patron members, we would love to do giveaways more than only 2 to 3 times a year. If you can help us reach that goal, you might win something through a giveaway. I don't think I got anything else on any of that stuff. If you guys have anything to plug, now is the time to do it.
Dope.
Perfect. Dope.
Shout out to Frank.
Shout out to Frank. Well, I have to tell you guys, this was easy money, boys. It was 100% easy money. I think protection detail is the way to go. All I had to do was sit up here deep in the Vox waves and spread the truth. No one expended too much ammo, right? I wasn't really paying attention.
I'm always the one that does it.
Oh, well, yeah.
You
well,
like
thanks for
that?
that.
You like that? You want some more?
You want a little more?
Well, until the universes align again, we have been 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio, linking the truth to as many minds and as willing ear holes as we are able to do. Don't let a four-armed emperor catch you by the tongue. They'll literally use it to rip out your entire spine.
Rock and roll.
I feel
Tasty.
Rock and roll. Let's just go outside. Let's just wait outside. Just wait outside.
Read a book. Read a fucking book.